Today I'm going to present some thoughts on stance and lever arms. This is an introduction to other topics that are going to come up and are going to be in form of webinars. Some are going to be webinars done by me, some are going to be webinars done by other people. We are going to look at stance, we're going to look at straight phalangeal alignment, the digital flexor pull, an introduction to kinematics, some biomechanics, movement of the horse, hemodynamics, and other goodies. So let's get started. This is a morph of a horse I worked on and had some problem, but nothing horrible, no real lameness, but just a little bit of problem with not locomotionally working quite right and not feeling completely comfortable. And you can see when you do corrective shoeing or trimming, you do want to have the hoof standing under the bony column. So over a period of time, the stance has improved, and so did the Palmar angle. So now for a moment of heresy. If you look at the before in August when we started, you can see the bones seem to be a bit more aligned in a straighter line, and after corrective trimming, etc., the bone kind of looks to align a little bit on the upper side and not exactly aligned. And that's what things I will also talk about, it straight phalangeal alignment as it relates to position of the pedal bone in terms of the sesamoid and the lever arm that happens, at both sesamoids. So the next slide is quite interesting, because if you look at the before and you look at the axis of rotation of the fetlock joints and a line projected perpendicular to the ground, you can see the distance between the position of the navicular bone and that plumb line from the axis of the fetlock joints. It's quite significant. It's 1.32, where after correction, that length is less. It's 0.86. Before, you have a palmar angle of 4.67, a navicular angle of 39.79. Again, it gets improved afterwards with a palmar angle of 5.65, a navicular angle of 43.98. And what's very interesting, you can see it's not exactly perfect, but you can see the reconstruction of the digital flexor tendon passing over the scutum of the sesamoids, the proximal sesamoids, to the attachment of the pedal bone. So in terms of lever arm and stress on the digital flexor tendon, one would want to have the position of the pedal bone within the capsule, quite under the bony column, which in general we look at the cannon bone. And if you look at before, you have a longer lever arm. I will explain lever arm, not the entire kinematics of the lower limbs. That's a little bit too complicated. But you have to consider that. What does it mean when you want a straight phalangeal alignment? Where is the position of the capsule, and where is the position of the pedal bone within the capsule? The next thing to consider, as actually, for instance, the load is shifted and you do not have a good stance under the bony column, you're going to affect the sole arch. Sole arches will be addressed later, but basically a little bit, if you're logical, you understand that actually if you don't have the right load, you're going to disturb tissue, you're going to displace everything, especially the sole and other tissue, but it's not necessarily good to not have the foot correctly under the bony column. So what you see in the green line, you will see a little bit more of a collapsed arch. You do not have a nice support to the navicular bone, and you have actually apparently a much shorter foot length, which actually you don't want to. You want a good foot length. That's nothing to do about length of toe or not. It's the position of the capsule as it relates to the position of the cannon bone. The after, you can see the line has a little bit, the green line has a little bit more definition, and it does actually, the curve is actually supporting the navicular bone, much better. The foot length is slightly longer, but actually it's a better foot. So again, the question, how short do you want your toe? Where is your foot as it relates to the cannon bone? What's happened internally? And how do you define lever arm according to what? It cannot be based on just looking at straight phalangeal alignment, because lever arm do not function just like that. So we're not going to go in detail about physics, biomechanics, kinematics, geometry, motion, statics, force, and how it ties up to dynamics. But it's really important that people understand the different terminologies, and also what is what. A lot of people mention biomechanics, but they're talking about functional anatomy. So I will go into more detail about that, how this different subject tie up to actually motion and muscle and bones, etc. I mostly myself done much more research on kinematics and geometry, like morphometrics and motion. I obviously do statics, but I am not an anatomist, just purely anatomist. As I mentioned, I am not a specialist in anatomy. I know just enough to understand where things are, but some people are just specializing in anatomy. I don't. I do dissect. They're not beautiful like some people do, professional dissection. I think I leave a lot of hair and I cut things where it doesn't make it look very good. But I will dwell on the most simple way of looking at antagonistic muscle. I will also dwell a little bit on what happened with the DDFT flexor tendon, what happened to the extensor, and all those lever arm and all that. How does this affect also muscle in general? Because you can't talk about tendon and pulling the DDFT flexor tendon without understanding antagonistic muscles. That's quite important. And then, to make everyone's head explode, we're going to go from 2D to 3D. We're preparing some more kinematics on a lot of bones we scanned, and I'm a little bit behind doing my research because I decided to remeasure them by hand, not all of them, but 2,000 bones, it's quite a bit. I'm probably not going to do all of them by hand, but you're going to see where again things get much more complicated when you look at the morphometrics of those bones and how it relates with movement in 3D. It's not a full it's not a full kinematics of the joints, but at least kind of looking at what the morphometrics and the kinematics apply to some of those bones, and which they are not symmetric in general, and it's not a deformity, it's normal because the bones are created and they do twist and coil naturally.